Um, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our panelists who are joining us today to speak on the topic of health and wellness. Also wanted to shout out to our two moderators who will be leading this panel tonight. And we're really excited to bring this panel to our audience by the Alumni Relations Committee.
Alrighty, good evening, everyone. My name is Alan Trin. I will be one of your moderators tonight. I go by he, him, his. I'm currently residing in Southern California. I'm excited to be graduating with my Doctorate of Pharmacy degree from the University of Hawaii at Hilo College of Pharmacy next month. I am working towards becoming a clinical pharmacist.
Hi, everyone. My name is Garrett Grothy. I go by he, him, and I currently work at Columbia University. I'm from the New England region, and I'm very excited to learn more about this topic tonight from our wonderful panelists. So thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Hi folks, I'm April Nguyen and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. I'm working as a pharmacist in industry at a biotech based in Boston, so I'm really excited to see this panel focus on wellness. I also serve as the co-director for alumni relations with Garrett. We're really excited to have this continental panel tonight.
Hello everyone, my name is Sunny Nguyen. I go by she, her, hers. I am also from the New England region. I graduated with a degree in biotech and currently work in the bio industry, focusing on cell gene therapy at the moment.
And I hope not last but not least, my name is Natalie Trin. I'm a recent grad and I currently work in the clinical research field, and I also go by she, her, hers.
All right. Hey, I know that guy. Hi, again, I'm Garrett. Alan, go ahead. You can reintroduce yourself.
Well, before we get started, we want to do a land acknowledgement. So before we get into the event, we want to acknowledge the land that we reside on. To learn more about Indigenous communities and the original stewards of the land you stand on, please use the tool nativeland.ca, which will be posted in the chat box. So feel free to type your findings in the chat. So tonight's topic, well, that Gary and I are moderating on is on the topic of health and wellness. So Garrett and myself will share a bit more about how this topic means to us. So what does the topic mean to you, Garrett?
Health and wellness means a lot of things to me, but I think if I were to boil it down to a single word, it would be balance. And I think striking a proper balance, whether it's how much you sleep, how much you eat, how much time you give to yourself, how much time you give to others. I think striking a balance in life is what will create better wellness and health for yourself. And so that's what health and wellness mean to me.
Sounds good. So for me, as a student and a healthcare professional, both health and wellness go hand in hand with me when I advise my patients on changes with their diet, exercise, and other balances in life. So in return, I have to show what I preach to them or teach them, like finding ways to balance my healthy lifestyle with managing my academics, volunteering my time at COVID vaccination clinics, and begin my job search as I enter my profession of pharmacy. So moving on. Next slide.
Sorry.
Is this stuck?
There we go.
There we go.
Great. And before we meet our speakers, we do have the opportunity for folks in the audience to ask their questions to our panelists tonight. We'll be dropping a link to a Google form in the chat where you can submit your questions. We're also moderating the chat. So welcome to everyone who's just joined us, and we're just posting about what land we're currently residing on. I'll turn it over to Alan to introduce the first speaker.
Sounds good. It's with great pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Dinh. He is a psychiatric nurse based in Toronto, Canada. He is passionate about mental health, community building, and storytelling. In his spare time, he likes to take photos, make music, and build instruments.
Timmy Vo was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, and graduated from Xavier University in 2011 with a Bachelor's of Science degree in chemistry pre-med. During and after his undergraduate education, he dedicated his time outreaching and empowering young leaders through various organizations locally in New Orleans, the Gulf Coast, and throughout the continent through the Union of North American Vietnamese Student Associations, or UNAVSA. In 2017, he graduated from the LSU Health New Orleans School of Dentistry with a Bachelor's of Science degree in dental hygiene and has been practicing at the Tulane Family Dentistry as a lead registered dental hygienist ever since. Passing it along.
And then Nguyen goes by she, her pronouns, and she's a first-generation Vietnamese American college graduate of the University of California, Berkeley. Born and raised in San Jose, California, she's proud to be back in her hometown to serve her community as a college advisor. Van is deeply passionate about recruiting and retaining students of color into higher education, increasing access to healthcare for Southeast Asian immigrants and refugees, and using data to inform policy and practice. She's dedicated to co-creating safer and braver spaces for young people to grow and thrive in. Again, please welcome all three of our panelists tonight.
Ooh, excited. All right. Thank you for the wonderful introductions of everyone. I'm excited. So our first question here is, how have you avoided burnouts while being involved in VSA or UNAVSA? We'll start off here with Naman.
Hey, actually, I don't, I never really like to lie about this, but I actually was really bad at avoiding burnout. So for context, when I was in, I was core when I was 18. So when I started college, university, I was also at core for Canada. And then when I started my, I guess it's second year of university, I became UVSA president in my region. So it was pretty bad. So I guess, you know, in retrospect, looking back, I think the one thing that I really wish I had done differently was to stick channel my energy more into things I was passionate about or roles I was more passionate about. Just because I think I had a need to, you know, as a young guy, finding his identity or whatever it is you want to call it. I want to do everything. So I think the most important thing for me looking back was just to find kind of the few things that I really wanted to do and just kind of stick to those things instead of trying to like do everything and just kind of do like a mediocre job. Yeah, I'll pass on to the next speaker because.
Let's thank you for that. Timmy, why don't you go ahead and share your experiences with this?
Sure. So I never experienced, funny that is, I never experienced burnout during BSA or UNASA. I did experience it after I work in the workforce industry, to be honest, because I understand more of like being burnt out as working. But like I relate to Naman, but more of a polar level that like I think being passionate about what you do, you make time for yourself to accomplish those things. Like you be organized, be prepared, and if you're passionate enough to do anything, you make time for it. So, and then I was like solely motivated by, you know, the committee members I worked with, the directors I worked with. So it was an honor. It was like a true blessing that, you know, they supported my work, and it was a really like fun time working within like VSA and UNASA. So,
and if you could just elaborate maybe for us, what are some ways you kept organized that helped you avoid that burnout? You mentioned that as one of your things that helped you.
Like setting time for yourself, like scheduling, having like a personalized planner, and then you dedicate X amount of time of like, you know, doing tasks within this hour, and then if you accomplished it, and then, well, my motto is like, if you like work hard, you play harder. So I get all the other stuff work out first, and then I have time to like revise whatever at the end. Sorry, don't listen to Alexa. So
Great.
yeah, that's been a success story that like I can attest to, starting from like just being young, learning that like my dad is always like OCD, always like put together, and it's like you have to work first and then you play after. So it makes a lot of time for like error mistakes to be corrected and everything. So it worked out for me.
I totally agree. Priorities are very important. So thank you, Timmy. Van, why don't you go ahead? We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Hi, everyone. I hope y'all are doing well today. This is Van, like the car or the shoe. Timmy touched on a point about doing work with people that you enjoy doing work with. And for me, one of my biggest priorities is building relationships. When I was a junior in college, that was 2017, I had the best possible team of co-producers for UC Berkeley's culture show. And I can't even imagine how many hours we put into that whole production. And then thinking back, we were looking at all the hours that we'd recorded recently, and I messaged them frequently to say that I don't know how I would have managed that if it wasn't for them. The same thing came up more recently when I was with the programming team for UNES's 16. We call ourselves the Propellers. And again, there's so much work, and a lot of us who are in this space may have been to conferences or are hoping to go to conferences or have staffed or directed for conferences. Do y'all know that there's so much work that happens behind the scenes? For me, it was always being able to rely on the people that I really enjoy doing work with. One of my mentors once said that even if I've had a dream team already, that hopefully they are not my last dream team. And that's a dynamic that I strive to have to keep me grounded and to keep me well, to keep my team members well while I'm doing this work with VSA, UNAFSA, and then the professional work that I do as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Don't forget, everyone, you can submit your questions through the link or in the chat too on these topics. Why don't we go ahead and move on to our next one, Alan, if we're ready there.
We are ready. So
Perfect.
For the next question, how do you advise students to set their work-life boundaries for the sake of their wellness? For this one, we'll start with Van, then Timmy, then Naman.
Alrighty, so in terms of setting work-life boundaries, y'all, I'm the first person who will say that I'm terrible at saying no. I'm always really, really bad at knowing where my boundaries are. I'm really quick to do my best to please someone else and to think of what others need before realizing my own needs. And it's taken me forever, and I'm still working on it to address and identify what my boundaries are and when they are and how they show up. For me, it's been a process of understanding how it shows up in my body, whether that's stress or anxiety. When I'm procrastinating, I know that I'm avoiding something, and that's very temporary stress relief. So for me, in thinking about what my boundaries are, a lot of it came down to how I organize. And I think it was Timmy earlier who said having an organizer, having a planner. For me, Google Calendar is how I do that best. So when I was able to visually see how much time I had for myself, I was realizing that there was really little of that time. Oftentimes that was going to sleep and making sure that I try to get 8 hours a day. I think that there was a very big norm from my university growing up and just in the profession that I do to bring my work home. And so realizing that I needed to be well to do well was how I reframed that. And for me, it worked out better to think that I can focus on myself and still do this work and probably do that work better when I'm prioritizing myself as part of that process.
Yeah, I agree with Van completely with just, having a good personal work/work-life balance. A reminder I have to tell myself every time I feel like under like stress. It's like, if you don't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love somebody else? So a lot of people, especially healthcare providers, we take care of other people's and then we forget to take care of ourselves. So there's a constant reminder that you have to replenish yourself. You have to gain your energy back to take care of these people. So a good academic personal life balance is a must. So like you dedicate your time to in your planner to dedicate how much time you study and how much time you spend time with yourself. Efficiency is my middle name. So I make everything time so optimized to where that like time is precious, as much as money is. So earlier I say work first, play harder. And then some of the ways that you can incorporate some self-care things into your schedule is learning how to perform your best, either if like studying we better be better for you early in the morning or late at night. It depends on you. For me, like I like to study right after school just because like I want to retain that memory that I've like gained throughout the day and kind of like reflect upon it. Back in high school, it's kind of different to where that like I can wake up about 4 o'clock in the morning, cram everything, and then go to school and ace that test. Not so much anymore. So yeah, learning your best self and how you perform is a key. I also would advise like whenever you're trying to take care of your physical health, have time to have workout buddies. Like if you're in like an e-board or like a committee, it's best to like, hey, you want to go on the run with me so I can, you know, like spend time together with you. Like you're also not only taking care of yourself, you're also building bonds and then kind of talking through things with, you know, your buddy to where that like, okay, like I'm getting as much things that I can, you know, accomplish as much things as I can. Another thing is diet challenges, meal prepping. Like every Sunday I meal prep, and that's been helping out with just lunch. I don't have to like worry about spending money throughout the week and then just like, you know, or finding things to like around my workplace to eat. It wastes time. And one thing that I love and saved my life too is nighttime alarms. Listen to your nighttime alarm. Like if you have an Apple phone, like I love to like tell myself it's okay, it's time to go to bed, whatever. And then it's just I drop everything, go to my bathroom, brush my teeth, floss, do my skincare routine, and then just like at the end of the night, turn off your phone and just read a book or just meditate. So that's the most efficient way. Sometimes I do get it carried away with watching TikTok if I'm in the mood or I have like jittery, because then like I work out at nighttime now and just I get jittery at night. So I sometimes dwell in that like rabbit hole of TikToks, but you know, you gotta tell yourself that you gotta follow like your schedule, and then if you discipline yourself to follow your own schedule, success is gonna be with you.
Thank you so much. Naman?
Yeah, I think Vang and Tibi hit on a lot of good points. I will add one of the things I really learned to do well and efficiently when I started working as a nurse is prioritization. Kind of map out my days and actually map out my week. And then I have like a day for overflow, but like I always prioritize kind of like the clinically important things first based on acuity. You know, if certain patients are more critical, then I have to see those first, and then the things that kind of that phone call that I can leave till tomorrow, I'll do that. So you kind of learn to have you build your system for priority, and I think it depends on, you know, your value system and whatnot. A lot of times in your experience, but like you learn what's important to you and how to prioritize things to align with your core values. Saying no is really important, and we joke about it a lot, but like one of the things one of my pet peeves when I was doing VSA stuff and after I finished was people saying, oh, I didn't have a choice, I need to come back to do this staff position. But the thing is, like, you always have a choice, and people should say no when they can. I think like joking about not having a choice to take on a role when you're too stretched thin, I think is a really something I always kind of advocate for people in my region to avoid, right? Like I always try to call them out on that. But just in my professional life, saying no is really important too, because you only have a certain amount of hours per day. And one more thing I think was really important for me and is setting boundaries and conditions. So for me, like I know that this is what I do when I'm doing well. You know, I sleep X amount of hours. I do certain routines. I stick to certain things. So like for me, I like to plan things and say, if I'm sleeping this amount of hours, so let's say I normally sleep 8 hours, if I'm only sleeping 4 hours a night, or if I'm starting to skip working out, if I'm starting to skip certain things, or if I'm spending less time with my family, those are kind of conditions for me to kind of reevaluate what my priorities are, or where I'm wasting my time or doing other things. Because like you kind of like it's kind of like that the metaphor for the jar with the gravel and the pebbles and the sand that kind of fills in, right? Like the gravel always needs to be the stuff that takes up the most space. And if you're scooping out all of like the pebbles to fill it with sand, like yeah, like that's kind of when you need to reevaluate the jar, right? So I kind of look at markers for when I'm not doing well as well, because you know it's great to thrive, but also it's also good to identify when you're not thriving.
Thank you all panelists. I think I do agree as a healthcare professional as well. You need to be well to do well. So being able to provide for others and help others, I believe that we need to be there with our health and wellness, with setting like consistency and prioritizing what we need to do as individuals in our personal and work life as well. All right, next question.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So belonging and support help create a healthy mental environment. How have you utilized your support circles during the pandemic? Why don't we start off with Timmy?
So I actually enjoyed my time off during the pandemic. It was 6 weeks with me like being unemployed. Um, but at the same time, it was kind of scary for us because then I have colleagues that kind of relates the same to where that like, what do? We file for unemployment. What's going on? How long it's going to take? Yada, yada, yada. And then the safety precautions that when we go back to performing on patients, like what it's going to be like. So it's a lot of scary. But in the meantime, you got to tell yourself that like there's nothing that you can control other than what you're controlling in your own home. So just be reminded about that, just remind yourself that like you can't control everything that you can't control because it's going to be really unhappy for you. The ways that I spend my time, just other than just keeping contact with my colleagues and stuff, is just sharing entertainment ideas. Honestly, just keep us occupied. I honestly took the time to like work out more at home, watching videos, and then going out to the park because the park was somewhat safe within the state of Louisiana at that time. Watching Netflix, Schitt's Creek, The Circle, Too Hot to Handle. And I also picked up on books too. I read this great book called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. Really, really great book to relate to that, in a pandemic wise, like what to do next and how do you deal with like being inside for so long, and then what attitude and what emotions that you should protrude to make sure that yourself is okay. And yeah, that's basically about it. And then just trading memes and then group chats, honestly.
That's always a good one.
Animal Crossing, oh my god, like that took off like whole bunch of like time on my hands. Like when I went back to work, I just completely dropped Animal Crossing. So that occupied my time really, really well.
Something that Timmy mentioned as well about not worrying about things that you have no control over kind of resonates with me. And I heard something great once that said, if it's not gonna, give your time to, grieve or worry or feel that feelings, but if it doesn't affect you in 5 years, don't give it more than 5 minutes. And that's something that I've always reminded myself, like, is this bad email I sent to everyone in my department really going to affect me in 5 years? No. Okay, let's recontrol ourselves. So thank you very much, Timmy. Why don't we go to Naman?
Yeah, for me, it's accountability. I'm like a super introverted person. I think one of the things that I really have trouble with is not isolating or isolating too much. So I kind of set like scheduled time to do like virtual hangouts or spend time with people, because I think sometimes I just get too far into my feels, and I just kind of not like I don't interact with anyone. So like that's kind of the thing that I really am dependent on for my supportive circle is accountability, right? They'll check on me, they'll reach out to me, and then yeah, I think that's important because it's something that I struggle with as an introverted person is making excuses to not talk to people. And even at work, like I'm working 5 days a week, I'm going into the hospital, but I have my own office and even our meetings are on Zoom. So it's like I basically isolate myself from my coworkers too. So the only people that I see are when I really need to see patients that are like really critically ill. So that's kind of my one thing is for supportive circles is accountability is really important for me, because I have a hard time with that sometimes. So you gotta have some help from your friends, as the Beatles would say.
Finding those support circles too can be a journey for people, but definitely finding someone, whether it's family, support can come from any type of person. Even us, we're all here to support each other. Van, why don't you go ahead?
I really liked both of your responses. The only thing I'll really add is that I'm really lucky to be really close with my family, and I'm currently living at home. So I'm really glad that the relationship that I have with them is as close as it is, but defining boundaries between me as a professional, like I can be working, this might count as an extracurricular as work or whatever, but letting them know like, hey, I'm going to be doing stuff at this time is part of how I've tried to navigate what it means to be working from home, but also being professional at home. Like it's not quite the same. I think one other thing is that part of me understanding my social circles is also understanding my relationship with social media. So maybe ironically, even in thinking about how my social circles have supported me, is I'll often share like I'm going to be off of social media for some time, or I'm going to take this week off to not go on Instagram altogether. If I go, then I'm going to go on my private account where I'm working on myself professionally. I'm seeing how other AAPI women are responding to the movements that are happening right now, how families are responding to the violence that was happening. And I think that redefining my relationship with social media has been one of those ways where the people that I connect with are also people who I know I don't have to explain myself to, don't have to say I'm not going to be posting anything. And I haven't posted for a long time, but I've gotten to a point where I can share that with others and not expect to have to live up to a certain expectation because of what social media has shaped a lot of my identity up to this point, at least. So letting myself do what I want to do with social media as opposed to letting it define and direct how I want to use that space.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, social media can definitely, be a source of support for people, but also a major drain. So I love that, like setting boundaries for yourself about, social media can really help. I know social media can be draining for myself sometimes. So thank you for that. Why don't we move on to the next question? Thank you, everyone.
Alrighty, so just like others like myself, graduation's around the corner. This question is, how did you manage work-life balance, transitioning from being a student to being part of the workforce? So we'll start off with Naman with this question.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a very applicable response. The great thing about nursing school is by the time you're in fourth year, you're basically expected to be working full-time nursing clinical rotations. So you're basically not going to class. So for a full year, it's like you're working, you're only just not getting paid for it. But I think for me personally, one of the things that I think if you're in a situation like that, I think the transition for me is the first thing was I gave myself credit for finishing my program. Like I worked hella hard. And if you're here for the beginning of the presentation, like I totally had a lot of burnouts. So I actually took a few months to actually reward myself just for like getting through it all. And then I started to think about transitioning into work. And I think in a way that was really helpful for me because I wasn't in that grind and that mindset of just like go. Like I took a moment to like collect myself and then that way I could be kind of like present myself when I'm interviewing as kind of the best version of me instead of one that's kind of like just survived an undergraduate nursing program and one of them, yeah. So that's my thing. Like I think if you do have the means to do it, to take some time off, I think the transition becomes a little bit easier if you take a break a little bit and then come back. That was important to me and it really helped me.
Definitely. I'm pretty much done with my clinical rotations as well. So I'm plan on taking some time off and collecting before I transition on taking my boards and stuff for pharmacy. So yeah, just giving myself credit on finishing 4 years or even more of school. What about you, Van? What do you think of this question?
I really like this question. I remember very clearly, it was last year in December, so December 2019, my manager had to sit me down and tell me, Van, you can't stop, or you can't keep bringing work home. Like you have to stop your hours when your hours stop. Like when the school day ends, you can't keep bringing all of that back with you. And I think part of the reason why I was so used to doing that was because as a student, I would go to class, and then I would go work out, and then maybe I would hang out, and then I'd go back to my apartment to do other work. Like work didn't end whenever my classes end, right? And that's what I was used to for 4.5 years as a student. When it came to working, I was still trapped in that mindset. And as I was doing all these extracurriculars on top of that, like I'm a very emotional worker, which means that for me, I have these bursts of energy that I need to capitalize on. And sometimes I capitalize on that energy at 10 o'clock p.m. at night. And so for me, just understanding that the workplace has different boundaries, my manager has certain expectations, and also the fact that, I forget who it was, I mentioned it earlier, I'm really passionate about my work. And so I am starting to unlearn that my work is part of my identity, but it's not all of my identity. It doesn't have to be all of my identity. And so realizing that, and also acknowledging the fact that just because I work as a college advisor and an educator to students whose stories are so much like mine, that doesn't mean that it's okay for me to keep pushing my boundaries to continue to do that work and to let it engulf more of my time and my space. And like I mentioned before, I have to be well to do well. So for me, it was really learning that I can start working at 2 o'clock p.m. because I've been at work since 7:30 in the morning. I can take breaks because if I'm not taking breaks, I'm going to be eating at the same time my students are flooding my office. And I think that just getting used to redefining what normal is and what taking a break means. I think it was Chloe who asked a question earlier about not feeling guilty. If that was what not feeling guilty started to look like for me.
Definitely. Yeah, I remember those days when I was during my didactics where I had to bring work home to study and then my leadership stuff and then working out. Just knowing my boundaries and stuff and my capabilities as well, it does help. Timmy, what's your opinion on this question?
So I can relate to Van Ray a lot, to where that like I'm so passionate about like my work that I do, I sometimes forget what is Timmy on a personal side, right? So after school, I kind of loved it, to where that I have so much freedom. It's just like in dental school, I've studied all weekend, and then there's only one day that I would actually like to have myself like self-composure wise. But just graduating after dental school, it was a big shift in my schedule, to where that like, I work full time Monday to Fridays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then when, Friday night comes, Saturday night comes, it's just, okay, what do I do? I have all the time on my hands. I'm not studying with everything. So you kind of like pick up on like self-care things for yourself too, like, and pick up hobbies for yourself, because passion projects or make yourself happy, you gotta have yourself striving for passionate goals for yourself, not just at work, but also personally too. So ever since I graduated from school, I've been working on my weight loss, and over the course of 3 years, I lost 60 pounds. So I've been working on that, and I'm in like the lightest, like fittest ever. So I'm really proud of myself. And then just doing those things, accomplishing goals for yourself in a more just not like working environment, but also personal, it's going to be really fulfilling, because you need to have that personal / work balance. Because if you achieve goals in both worlds, then you're going to be a master of just controlling your own life. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Timmy. I do agree. I do set aside time on the weekends to spend time with friends and family and go out and have like lunch with them. The people that really support you will bring you joy, especially. And then I've been working on my like health as well, like going to the gym once a day for a couple hours. But yeah, all right, next question.
All right, so this question is for Naman. So being in the front line of the pandemic, how have you taken care of yourself after working long hours?
Honestly, I've like revisited every album from the Metallica repertoire. But I'm just kidding. Ride the Lightning is the only album that's good. Honestly, one of the things that I really advocate, and I always call my coworkers out for it too, is not coming in early and not staying late when you're not being paid overtime. Because and I hate, and I'm a little bit like biased with this because I'm also a union rep, but I always tell my coworkers, yo, your manager's not paying you for your extra work. So prioritize the things that are kind of like acutely important, and then things that can wait for tomorrow. like should wait for tomorrow. And that's kind of like, I'm really strict about that. And if I go in early, then I'll leave early too. So I mean, I'm lucky that I have the flexibility for that. But that's one thing. And I think like my second thing that I'm really strict about is I always give myself at least an hour when I get home from work to not do anything. Like, and I don't care if like I have something coming up and like there's a whole bunch of stuff on my plate. Like I like decompressing is really important. And like I think doing nothing is underrated. Like I think millennials are kind of like wired to be like always grinding, and I hate that whole mentality in the sense that we're kind of taught like if you're not doing something, you're not being productive. But like,
Right.
if you're not doing something, you're being extra productive because you're making yourself like you're preparing yourself to do something else, right? Like I would rather do something 100% than do something for double the amount of time at like 50%. Because and I'm sure Timmy with the middle name efficiency could agree with me that like it's like spending too much time doing something also can be really exhausting. So like that's my thing. My parents will like they know this is part of my routine. Like I'll come home and I'll like do nothing for an hour, and then I'll consider what I have to do the rest of the day. But that's my two things, like
Thank you.
boundaries and decompressing.
And it's just something to add real quick too, like outside of boundaries, if you let people push your boundaries, they'll keep pushing. So like for me, I would always be the guy that's first at work and everyone's like, Garrett's the first at work. And then it was kind of just expected I would be at work. So if you don't set boundaries and you let people push your boundaries, they will take advantage of you. It's just human nature. So keep that in mind. So thank you very much, Naman. We'll move on to our next question here. Alan, take it away.
Sounds good. This question's for Van. What do you recommend students do to maintain their health and wellness as school becomes a hybrid of being both virtual and in person?
I'm very excited to see how this dynamic will play out because my students are moving back in person next week. They're currently on spring break. Next week they're coming back, but I will not be back in person because I work through a different organization. I work with UC Berkeley, and so we don't follow the same policies as the district. But what we already start to see is that a lot of my students have shared that they are really anxious about what it will mean to be in person. And that's true for a number of reasons. For some of them, this will be their first time. They are incoming ninth graders, or the current ninth graders, and this will be their first time on campus. They've never been here, and so they have no control. And by now, they're already preparing to be 10th graders. They have no clue what it means to be an in-person high school student yet. And so there's so much that's out of their control, even though there are a lot of expectations. And you say that you're already a sophomore, a second year at this high school or at this space that you should have been at already. And so just thinking about how none of this is supposed to be normal, the pandemic is not normal, and recognizing that for them and for myself, because I'll also be entering my school site for the first time, is that it's totally okay to take time to adjust. And everyone is going to take different amounts of time to adjust too. I have no idea what kind of home environments some of my students are coming from, and they also don't know what I'm coming from. If I tell them I'm working on an ironing table, well, now I'm going to have a whole office to myself. Like, how am I going to transition from this ironing table to an office with a closed door and a new lock? Like, all of these things are going to add up over time. And so just giving yourself the grace to be able to work through that and to also remind yourself that you're not alone. One of my biggest things is reminding myself that I'm not the only person experiencing it, that I have folks that I can lean on when I have those questions. Really importantly, just letting myself know that I can be kind to myself in that transition process. I think that I am someone who's very, very difficult on myself, and I'm really quick to remind others that I'll give you a lot of grace too. I also hope that you remind me to give myself grace because I'm not supposed to know things and get things right the first time. So my recommendation for students as they transition back in person or as they readjust is to give yourself the time and space to do that. And remember that there are folks that you can lean on in doing that.
Definitely. I think it was a hard thing for me to transition to virtual when I was finishing up my third year of pharmacy school. And none of this is really normal. It takes time to adjust to meeting other people in person now instead of through a webcam. But yeah, definitely taking your time to work through everything, and that everyone's gone through the same process, but it takes time. All right, next question. Back to you, Garrett.
All right, let's see here. So this one is for Timmy. We all know laughter is the best medicine. What advice do you have for anyone who has trouble smiling or getting their day going? Maybe in the morning, hints would be would be helpful.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Timmy.
So there's a lot of like specter of like unhappiness that goes on. Maybe like you just, one day like you just wake up cranky because you didn't have a lack of sleep, or you've been having this problem for that persists for a very long time. Like maybe, your boyfriend broke up with you or something like that. But what are the things that I like to do whenever I feel in that situation is that, I need to focus on myself. I need to examine what are my emotions on and be validated for that. Like these are my emotions and I'm allowed to feel that way. And I like to do mindful exercises through an app called Headspace. And I use it about a lot, pretty often actually, like whenever I get those like mood swings, or I know that I'm not okay, I'm not the Timmy that everybody sees me as. So I use that as a grounding tool for myself, just to make sure that like I'm okay, I'm here, I'm still me kind of thing. So, number one is just check in with yourself and check in with your emotions. Number two is just to ask for support, like even ask, for your friends to like, hey, can I vet you with this situation and everything. So whenever I talk to my friends, like it's just really so like, oh my God, I'm talking to you, but I'm finding my own answers. Sometimes you need to vocalize your issues. And then whenever you vocalize this, you're already like solving the answers for yourself. So there's not really much of people, who you talk to. It's just figuring your things out for yourself. Sometimes you need to talk it out, vocalizing it or writing it out, so and then with you having that connection with other people, they know that, you have these things, these issues that you're personally going through, and then they're here for you. So,
Right.
Another thing I like to do, these are the tidbits I like to do too on my own. I have a playlist on Spotify that makes me keep up and going. Like I drive to work and just like keeps me in a good mood. And then it's just like, man, like my day is gonna be badass, like I'm gonna be successful. I'm gonna like work and then come home and then work out and then eat a good ass dinner. Like I'm totally excited for about this day. So if you have that mindset, it's gonna be well for you. And one last thing that I like to do sometimes when I'm really in a rut to where that like I can't find myself anymore is take the time to, look in the mirror, or even just like, don't have to look in the mirror. You can just envision yourself, close your eyes, and then tell yourself that, you're blessed, you're loved, you're beautiful inside and out, and you're more capable of what you think you are, and you're
Right.
capable of loving others. So, and then when you do that and you keep yourself telling yourself that, watch how the day unveils for yourself. You'll be surprised.
Thank you, Timmy. Yeah, I just threw up a YouTube clip in the chat session. It's from a U.S. Admiral William McRaven. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's about how making your bed, the first thing you do, will set you up for success. It's a great inspirational video. I recommend everyone watch it. We are going to move on now to the question and answer portion. Why don't Alan is going to introduce this section for us. But thank you, Timmy, so much for sharing.
Yep, thank you all to our panelists this evening. But for this portion, we are opening up questions from the audience on our multiple platforms. If you have not, please ask your questions through the link provided or in the chat, and we will go from there. All right, Garrett, I think you might have a question already.
Yes, I think we do. So one of the questions here is for students currently job searching, how do we handle burnout? Trying to find a position in a highly competitive field, arena, especially during the pandemic. So if anyone has any pointers for how to handle job searching burnout, this person would appreciate it. Why don't we start? Anyone can just chime in. It's kind of open format.
I think like job searching is a stressful time. I know that when I was applying for jobs to be a dental hygienist, I just waited for a month just basically just looking at my resume and just like cold calling offices, but make it as a game, make it interesting to where that like, okay, well, plan it out. I'm gonna be visiting these places and then just dropping my resumes there. And then just make it part of your routine. Like you don't have to be so like endoused with it like
Right.
throughout the whole day. You can block out just an hour, just job searching, and that's gonna be it.
Right.
And then like like there's not gonna be jobs that to where that like it's gonna be there like forever, and there's jobs that gonna be there like the next day. So you just can be consistent with it, and just but then don't dwell on it too much. It's like, oh, they're not hiring me because I'm not good enough. No, there's always gonna be somebody that's gonna hire you. Just keep hope, keep yourself interested, and then those times you need to just practice on your skills. Like what can I do to enhance my resume better, or what classes should I take more to make sure that like everything's good to go, and even just working on your interview skills. Just take your time away, and then from just job searching and just okay, well, how I'm gonna present myself as sitting in an interview, and then what outfit I'm gonna wear. So that's always interesting. Keep those things as just fun and interesting for you, and then in no time you'll get the job that you want.
Right. And what Timmy said too is, make a goal for yourself so that you're not, you're not underperforming and you're not overexerting. I think that's a good way to set goals for yourself. Anyone else have anything to share on this topic? We have a few more questions if not. Great. Here's a good one that everyone might be able to share a little bit on. So in light of the recent hate crimes in the Asian Pacific Islander community, whoops, scroll down. How are you creating safe talking spaces for yourself and others?
I can start to answer this one. Because I work as an educator, one of the most important things that I feel as part of my job, I believe as part of my job, is checking in to make sure that my students know that there are people who are listening. When I was in high school, I don't know how often we really ask, and even for now, whenever I have the question of how are you doing, I think the typical response is, I'm good, I'm okay, like, sure. But I really, really like pausing to ask how I'm feeling, how it's showing up in my body. And then as an educator, because I think about my role as an educator is letting myself and letting my students sit with that so that we can actually take the time to think about how it's affecting us, or if it's something that we even have the capacity to process at this time. I think there's so many things that are going on right now, and this being one of them, from the murder recently, like I just think about the number of circumstances that can be in place for someone to have the capacity. And I also acknowledge that there's a lot of privilege in being able to have the capacity to process all of these things as they're happening. So before any of this really begins, is checking in with how I'm feeling, what my immediate responses are, and also making space before we actually start talking about college access, college applications, financial aid packages, that you're doing okay. Because if you're not doing okay, then why would any of the stuff that I'm about to present about, or any of the conversations, actually make it to where it's meaningful and relevant for you at this time? If that's not a priority, then we're not going to focus on that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
No, good.
I think also one of the things that I've learned to do a little bit better is asking how are you doing, but not asking explicitly how are you doing. Like I think there's other ways that kind of elicit like the other responses. Like there's is there anything on your mind? Is there anything that you want to talk about? Because I think how are you doing is such a colloquially used saying that we're so used to responding with, oh, I'm good, even when we're not good, right? And I think if for me at least initially, and if when you respond by saying, oh, I'm not good, it feels awkward, right? Like they're kind of like you're burdening the person that's asking. So a lot of times it's like, yeah, what's on your mind, or what's happening right now that's that you're interested in, something like that. Just finding different ways to be interested is really important to me, other than just saying, how are you doing?
All right, thank you very much. Just for the sake of time, since we are running very close to the end here, we're gonna conclude our question and answer portion. Alan, do you have anything to add before we close this portion of the presentation?
I do agree. It's okay to not be okay. Having that supportive group does help out with lashing out on what's on your mind and then finding different ways to understand how we feel in this situation and what next steps we have to take. But yeah, to wrap up our discussion, we would like to thank everyone who joined us today. As Naman, Timmy, and Viet mentioned, there are many ways to keep your health and wellness in check, whether being a student to being part of the professional workspace. We should figure out ways to schedule time for our support groups, learn how to say no for the sake of our well-being, and finding ways to have our own personal space or activities to wind down at the end of the day. On behalf of the UNASA Alumni Relations team, we invite you to join us with our next event, our Alumni After Work series social. It will be a collaboration with the UNASA Civic Engagement team. It'll be a night of culinary fun and food. I would like to return it back to Nat now to share how you can stay connected with the UNASA community.
All right. I believe we have now hit the end of our panel. Thank you to everyone who's joined. Again, feel free to click on any of these links to add yourself to our alumni directory, join our LinkedIn group. If you have any questions, contact us. And for the panelists, if you want to drop your contact info, feel free to do so in the chat so that any of our members who are interested in reaching out, they can do so.
Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate it. Yeah, definitely drop contacts or LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever you'd like. We love sharing resumes and connecting with everyone. So thank you very much, everyone.